Can an all-knowing God and free will coexist? Now I'm going to get to this question because this is a common argument against an all-knowing God is, well, an all-knowing God already knew the decisions humans were going to make, and yet he still let them make it. So he made that decision for them. Um, and the fact that there is an all-knowing God means free will doesn't exist because he already knew the decisions you were going to make and created it anyways. Now, as jumbled as that logic is, because it doesn't follow any sort of like actual logic, and I'm not meaning that as an insult, to just it doesn't. It's actually very illogical to make this proposition because, well, first you have to define what free will is. Okay, so let's define free will. All free will, it's not ultimate free will. We are limited in our choices by our nature. Every creature on earth has limited free will. A bear may want to talk, it can't. I may want to walk down the street or run down the street, but I can't make the choice to fly down the street. Now, I can get in an airplane and it can fly down the street, but I can't. I can't just choose to fly. I would have to get in a mechanism that can fly in order to do that. So I'm limited by my nature. And I think this is perfectly encapsulated in Romans 3:23. And it may not make sense at first, but like your sin nature makes it that you will never be righteous. You cannot choose to be righteous because of decisions Adam and Eve made. If that makes any sense. Now, this limitation does not mean you don't have accountability, because what the Bible proposes, even though it doesn't propose like ultimate free will, you have moral choices to make. So we have a limited free will. We do not have like this unchecked free will. And we are held accountable for our choices. Matthew, Acts, John, we have to repent and we have to believe we are going to be held accountable for our choices. And our choices determine our destiny. It also depends on your goals. If you want to die, you don't really have a choice not. And it's like eat or die. And if you want to die, you can't eat. Right? But if I want to live, I have to eat. I don't really have a choice in the matter. Now the point comes, if God had foreknowledge of our choices, does that mean we really had free will? But that's kind of the wrong question to ask. The question to ask is, does God's foreknowledge affirm that his foreknowledge affected our decision in that choice? No, it does not. First, God is not limited to the parameters that humans are limited to. He exists in the past, present, and the future. He's outside of time and space. So yes, he knows the end. He knows all the decisions you made. And he also knew them at the beginning because he exists at the beginning and the end and the present at the same time. So, of course, he has foreknowledge of your decisions. But that does not mean that his foreknowledge coerced your decision. You still made the decision. And you were held accountable for that decision, even though he knew ahead of time you were going to make it. Like God knows everyone already who is going to come to him. I think people mix that up with predestination. Like he hand selected people. Like, oh, you're going to be saved. You're not going to be saved. You're going to be saved. You're not going to be saved. No, he just knows because he's already seen the whole thing play out. He already knows who's saved back in creation. Because remember, he exists in the present, the past, and the future simultaneously. You still made that decision. And his foreknowledge of your decision did not coerce that decision. Foreknowledge is not a hindrance to free will. This is stated by Bocephus or Augustine, one of the philosophers in like early Christian thought. And it can't be because it is not the cause of foreknowledge is not the cause of future things. It is just the knowledge of future things. But it did not cause those future things to exist. So in essence, we have a limited free will because everything has a limited free will, limited by its nature. And we will be held accountable for those choices. You are held accountable for your choices every day. But what the Bible does propose is like a moral free will. We have moral choices to make every day. Kill or not to kill, steal or not to steal. I have to eat to live, but I can choose how much I eat. I can be a moderate eater or a gluttonous eater. I have to drink water to survive, but I can also choose to drink soda or alcohol, and I can choose to drink too much of it. But I have to drink to survive. I don't really have a choice in the matter, but I do have a moral choice in the situation. So really it comes down to mankind has a choice between life and the good and evil and death. And yes, God already knows that choice, but he still allowed you to make that choice. And those two things are not incapable or incompatible or even contradictory of each other. So what are you going to choose? You know, Jesus says, you refused to come to me to have life in John 5:40. You could if you wanted to. You choose not to. And if you have chosen to be there, you will be rewarded for that choice. Because people, when they make moral decisions and they choose good, they should be rewarded. And God does reward us. Nature rewards us. And just because God knew ahead of time, while also before time, that you were going to make that choice, only because he knew ahead of time and he exists ahead of time and before time at the same time while he's creating, while the creation is finished. Wrap your head around that. But just because that's the case doesn't mean that you didn't make the choice. So we do have free will, and an all-knowing God is absolutely compatible with free will. And there's no logical argument to say otherwise. People they doubt it, but they can't like disprove that with logic. It is the most logical conclusion. You cannot logically conclude that God's foreknowledge coerced your decision. He just has knowledge of the decision you made. He still let you make the decision. you could have made the other decision, and he would have had foreknowledge of you making that decision.